I&M is here for flexible financial solutions to personalized guidance. We're on your side, championing your progress and celebrating your successes. So don't just bank, build your future with a partner who believes in you. Experience the power of on your side banking. Find out more at any I&M Bank branch close to you. I&M Bank, on your side. At 8 minutes after 7 o'clock, this is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu, Dennis and Mark with you today. We're getting into conversations this morning with Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, who is the Executive Director of Usawa Agenda, and he'll join us in a short while. And even as we do, just looking at things and just a wrap up to the conversation that we had as we're coming towards the top of the hour, that yes, we can actually find things that are happening that are good. Unfortunately, look at all the proverbs that we hear around the world that, one bad apple spoils the bunch.
Yes.
Or that, the stain from the head, or the stain on the shirt is the one that's visible to the eye. Yeah. Even if it's just a little stain, it's the stain that's visible to the eye. And that's what we are saying. That unfortunately, that the things that we see which present or cause a rot in our societies are the things which are most prominent. And the good things, unfortunately, have to keep fighting so hard to claw their way out. Sadly, we don't have to go too far to find a lot. They're on our headlines. They're on our front pages. They're in our ears every minute, every day. They're in announcements that we hear. It's good. I don't know where, but it would appear as though the Ministry of Education has now found the money that they will use to pay for exams.
Yes.
Now, remember where that comes from. That for every exam you sit, there's an exam registration fee.
Yes.
As it were the case in public institutions, government institutions, schools, that the government shouldered the cost of this. It's 5,000 in some cases, it's 700 in other cases. Remember that there are a lot who couldn't afford to come to school anyway, right? So they came to school and, however they were supported, that happened. Majority of the student population in Kenya is in government school. It's in government schooling. It's in public schooling.
True.
So a lot of these examination fees were taken care of. Now, for you to come in 2025 and then say, we don't have the money for this, it jeopardized potentially the future of a lot of the children. Look at the exams that we have hitting us this year. We've got a grade 7 exam. We've got a grade 9 exam. We still have KEPSEA. Yeah. We have KCSE. Yeah. All of those things to happen, in the next, moving on from August, going towards November and into parts of December. So it would be interesting to know where the Ministry of Education or where Treasury now has found this money, and whether it is because of the backlash that we hear from members who are saying, guys, what are we supposed to do? That then you come to your senses and realize, okay, actually, we should continue to shoulder this cost.
Yes.
But I find that the devil really is in the details. The small things that we're supposed to do that essentially make up this pie is the thing that we leave along the way, and that we end up in a situation where we cannot claw back from it. And I really find myself feeling for the folks who are sitting at the helm of the ministry. Because how is it that at every level, whether it's ECDs, which is domiciled at the counties, and then going to primary, and then going to secondary, then going to tertiary, university, all of this, we have a problem. I actually am finding myself saying, how do the folks under the leadership of the CS and then going down to, PS level, and then your directors of education across board and your curriculum development and all of this, how do you keep it together in a crumbling sector?
Well, if you read what the CS is basically saying, he's saying that he's going to find the funds necessary to be able to do the examinations and have them be free for all learners in public institutions. Now, he's not saying that there is an allocation. He's saying that he's going to find an allocation within the budget with the cooperation of the Treasury. Now, if you just pause for 1 second, you must ask yourself, was this not in sight when the budget was being proposed? And it then forces you to come to either of two conclusions. Either it was not in sight, or it was and had been ignored until there was a certain furore. Unajua furore?
Lile.
Where now people are reacting. Either way, then it means that the leadership is lacking. And the danger with that is this, is that everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah, and you see, when you talk about these funds and how it was removed, to start with the exam fees, was because
It wasn't even removed. They said they don't have money.
no, leave alone the exam fees. I'm talking about how, why former President Uhuru Kenyatta scrapped the burden from the parents.
Yes.
And took that burden.
Okay,
The government picked it up because education was free. You know, students would go through education, but when it comes to education time, you find a lot of students were not sitting their exams because parents were not able to afford. So you find that a student has gone through education all the way, but on the final day when they're supposed to sit the exams, they're not sitting the exams because parents cannot afford it. And the government decided to shoulder these so that that promise of education as a right in the Constitution, every child in this country would be able to attain that promise. And today, as the government decides to now claw back on the gains that have been made, what would have happened is we'd see millions and millions of kids unable to sit the exams because the parents are unable to pay the 5,000, the 700 shillings that the government had given the promise of shouldering. So as we look at what we are doing, we are going against the gains that we've made over the years.
Look, I think that I do agree with John Gishoki here, who's one of our comments this morning. And he's saying, in fact, the chickens are coming home to roost. It's been years of mismanagement that essentially is now biting us where we are currently. And Mark, you did ask that question, that was this money not allocated? Yes, it was. 656 billion.
Yes.
656 billion shillings was allocated. It was budgeted for. We read it and we stood on the steps. Who was the CS Treasury at the time? Can't even remember. It seems like so long ago. It was just last year.
Last year.
Good grief. Ndungu was the CS Treasury. He read the words. Yes, he was. Imagine.
No, I'm trying to remember whether we ever had a CS called Ndungu. That's how
Yeah,
far it
imagine.
feels.
That's how far it feels. But it's
Yeah.
just 24. It's just 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And he actually did read that number. 656 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, sir, has been kept aside for education. He did. He said the words. And that took care of that. So where did it go? And you have to ask those questions. And perhaps to help us answer that this morning, our good friend, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, is here with us this morning. Dr. Terry, good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be back and sorry to be late.
Well, thank you first of all for apologizing for being late. And then we've got to ask if you're all right.
I am good.
Fantastic. You found us in the throes of this discussion, Dr. Terry, and we're already a little bit irritated, as I seem to have been irritated for years over this education thing. The executive director of the Usawa Agenda is here. And before we get into things,
We need to visit
let me
Ghana.
breathe. Let's visit Ghana for a minute and have some chocolate and gold. Gold in terms of the nuggets of a proverb that Mark is going to share. And then we'd like your interpretation of the same.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
So the British visited these people and colonized them, and said it was the first country to be set free from British rule. A child who asks questions does not become a fool. A child who asks questions does not become a fool. What do you think of that proverb, sir?
First, the ability to ask questions confirms that you're not a fool. Fools don't ask questions. So if you're asking questions, first, you're not a fool, but second, you're acquiring knowledge, because that is what asking questions does. It helps you to acquire knowledge. So I think it's important that we cherish questions. Every solution comes from a question. I know there are people who don't like to be asked questions. It's unfortunate. We should be asked questions at all times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
There you have it.
fools can't even create questions.
Exactly. Not even
I've learned
create
something
them.
today. Yeah.
Well, let's set the stage a little bit now with you in the room. Emmanuel, we are looking at a situation whereby we seem to be hurtling towards the abyss when it comes to education in Kenya at the moment. It doesn't really matter what level of education we look at, there seems to be an issue. And here we are asking certain questions around now and saying that, how did we get into this mess that we are currently in? And who's then is paying the price between then when it comes to funding and when it comes to delivery. So there's the funding aspect whereby capitation, of course, has been a sore spot over time. If we look at the current state of things, 64 billion shillings over the last 5 years is owed in capitation. Whether they ask the questions about where did this money go, it's still owed. If we look at 2025, 7,000 shillings is owed from first term. We are going towards the fourth week of second term. 22 billion shillings was released last week. Some schools got 4,000 bob, other schools got 87. I desire from the depths of my soul that this was an error in the computer, but this is the reality faced. And when we deal with those financial issues, we're also dealing with delivery issues across board in terms of what is happening and how education is being shaped over the next few years. And we have to ask the question that, is the education sector paying the price?
I think the country is paying the price. This crisis has been long coming. In 2022, as Usawa agenda, we put money in the presidential debates. And we wanted to push the agenda that education should be on top of the issues to be canvassed by presidential candidates. And we insisted, we tried to convince everybody that the biggest crisis the new government was going to face was in the education sector. And we were not successful in convincing many people. I feel sad that we were actually right. I wish that we were wrong, but we were right. This crisis has been coming because we have made policy pronouncements in the sector that have not been backed up by well thought out implementation plans. And if you make a policy pronouncement without a well thought out implementation plan that is also costed and therefore budgeted for, then you start hurtling from one crisis to another. And that is where we are in the sector, that for a long time we have made pronouncements because they are politically expedient and never thought through how we're going to fund those pronouncements. And even when we allocate resources, we never follow through to make sure that every shilling is accounted for and it is actually directed at the most need in the sector. So we have done things that I don't know what we are optimizing, but we are not optimizing quality education for sure. Yeah.
Daktari, it is a sad place to be in as a country because if you go back to even how CBC came into place, there was little to no engagement with the public on which is the best way forward with regard to education in the country. Then comes matters to do with the funding model in the country and look at where we are today with regard to that. And then there is capitation that does not get to schools on time. There's deficit and the problems keep on rolling forward. And nothing seems to be handling a problem at a time as we move forward. So in terms of education in the country, how does it look? Because it looks like especially the grade 9s or going to grade 10s are the guinea pigs of education as we speak right now, because no one really seems to be taking care of them. Just what are we doing to the education of this country?
We're doing many things. We are trying to do many things and doing almost all of them wrong. Why? Because we seem to think that when there are so many problems to solve, that the one that can wait is education. And that is the most unfortunate thought. Because unlike all other sectors, a mess in education reproduces itself over time. We ruin one generation, this generation who produce doctors, every generation produces its own doctors. Whether we educate them or not, there will be doctors, but the issue is which kind of doctors will we have? There will be teachers from this generation. If we haven't given them the right education, they will reproduce what we are putting in them. And that's why I started by saying the country pays the price. When you sacrifice education, the country pays the price. It's not the child who is in that sector. Some of them will come out shrewd, and they will become some of the notorious fellows we know around who have no education but are swimming in money.
Yes.
Some of these kids will become those. But the country will pay the price for not educating these kids.
Let me ask. We do not operate in this country without short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans.
Yeah.
We do not operate without a civil service that is quite well educated and knows what they are doing. I have had the privilege of working with many a civil servant, and I've never found one who's grossly incompetent, at least after Kibaki. What exactly is ailing the education sector? What pinpoint it for me, because I don't think CBC came from the air. I don't think anything we are doing is magic or rocket science.
So CBC was well thought out. Actually, unlike 844, which came from the air,
Yes.
because 844 was born out of the Mackay Commission.
Yes.
Mackay Commission was not set up to review the curriculum. It was set up to explore establishment of a second university in the country.
Yes.
It actually led to the establishment of Moi University.
Okay.
But then, as a footnote said, change also the system of education,
Yes.
which was
As a
not
footnote.
which was not in their terms of reference. And that is how 844 came into being. CBC was well thought out. Started with a needs assessment, and every step was initially followed. The problem with CBC was implementing it without a costed implementation plan that tells you, in year 1 you need this, in year 2 you need this, in year 3 up to year 12 and 15,
Yes.
this is what you need, and so you need to budget. Amina came to the ministry and realized we didn't have a costed implementation plan and said, let's wait
Let's
and
wait.
prepare
Yes.
for implementation.
Yeah.
And she was kicked out of the ministry. There were thoughts that she wants to undermine the implementation of CBC. So the problem that ails the sector, and I think is the problem that ails the country, is people in positions of responsibility doing what is expedient today without any thought of tomorrow.
Okay.
How successful will I look today? Even if it means that I am being successful by making it impossible for the next generation to survive tomorrow. So that is the problem that we have, not just in the sector, but in the country. Bureaucrats in the ministry knew what needed to be done.
Yes.
Many of them tried to advise. But of course, in every segment of our society, we have this sufficient number of sycophants who will jump around whoever is wielding power on that day and tell them, no, as you are thinking, you are right. So with that stock of sycophants, these individuals keep on moving us into a very deep hole that I don't even know how we'll get out of. Yet there is sufficient wise counsel from within our public service, or people who are knowledgeable, who are saying we need to follow every step diligently to be able to deliver the transformation we want to achieve.
I imagine that you're putting together, I always try to visualize, because maybe that's just who I am, but I try to visualize things, and I say, well, I liken it to this. So if I'm getting something in a box, Doc, and it's the different parts in the box, and I know that this is the picture of what it's supposed to look like at the end of the day, and then this is the purpose that it's supposed to serve. The manual usually comes in the box, right? And it will show me that this piece is supposed to be connected to this piece. And in order for this thing to function, then you need to put it together in this way. Not you can't fit it in a way in which it's not supposed to. But the manual guide is there. Essentially, what we are saying for education here is that there's a guide but we've not followed the guide. And that even after you've put this thing together, they tell you now you must insert a battery and then you give it life for the thing to run. What we've not done across the line is inserted the battery. But somehow we expect that this machine is going to run and give us the results that we are looking for. But what I'm hearing you saying through all of this, that this machine will not run. It may go, it may spurt a little bit here and there, but it is not going to give us the result that we are looking for. What does that mean? That the guinea pigs of this curriculum, which are the current grade 9s, they started off in grade 3, 6 years old. We will not have children who have gone through an efficient system of education, not now, not tomorrow, not for long as we don't put the battery into this machine. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, you're actually right, Ndu. And I want to say this to a lot of Kenyans who have disengaged. There are a lot of Kenyans who have disengaged with what is happening in the sector.
Yeah.
And opted to take their children to international schools.
Including the people in the ministry.
I understand them,
Yeah.
because as a parent, you want the best for your child, and I understand them, especially when they are so proximal to the problem and they can see it clearly. And they think, I can see the problem, so why am I not doing something about it for my child? But these children, we are not educating and just taking through a ritual called schooling. Are the majority, they're the future rulers of Kenya.
Yes.
So those we are taking to these elite schools will come back here to work as expatriates for these CBC kids that we are not educating, because they're the ones who are going to govern us in the near future. And so I want to challenge the people who are running away from this system to just engage, because they are the ones with some significant capital, both social and political and economic, that they can be able to make change happen in this sector and be able to make us realize that when we came up with this curriculum, we developed a framework for its implementation. If we went back to that framework and tried to be faithful to that framework and financed the implementation of that framework, we'll have a good system of education. We are held hostage by some interests that don't want change, or that feel if this change is skewed in certain ways, they will gain personally at the expense of the country. And then we have a lot of other challenges that are systemic. When I came in, you guys were talking about the exam fees and the budget that was not given. And I think sometimes that maybe we are conversing about the wrong problem. We should be asking ourselves why in this day and age we need to go and print an exam in the UK so that it costs billions. That exam can be cheaper. Yeah, we print our money in Kenya. Why are we printing exams
outside the country?
Outside the country.
Because somebody has a contract, Doc. Come on.
Yeah, so we need to have that conversation. How much should the exam cost? So that government is not saying, and parents paying exam fees has been coming for a long time, and I just want to urge parents to prepare to pay from next year, because there will be all these talks forth and back with the politicians saying no, we will pay. In the end, parents will pay from next year, and I think they should prepare to pay.
Let's take a break at this point, if we can, because prepare to pay as we break. And we're asking ourselves the question, really, where are we? Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa is the Executive Director of the USAWA Agenda, and we're asking the question, between funding and delivery, where are we? And that note right now at this point is where he says, you know what, the ministry might come in at this point and do something. and pay for exams. Treasury might pay for exams this year, but look at a situation whereby next year you will be asked to pay for it. Why are we charging so much? Why does it cost so much? And where are we going? That's what we're asking this morning in terms of education in this sector. We'll continue with this after this break.
And so NEC brings Nairobi to mark exams, to invigilate exams, and they're not able to pay them at the end of the exam season. If you recall last year, they were paying them in November, the money for 2023, paying them in November last year, so that they can be able to entice them to come and mark again exam in December. And because of those challenges, I think that NEC has been of the view that they should be allowed to collect exam fees from parents. So when they are setting exams and when they are asking teachers to invigilate, they have money to pay them. And for me, I think that is what government has done. Acknowledged that we are unable to pay, so can parents pay? I want us to have a conversation around how much should exams cost, so that if parents are going to pay, they are not paying the kind of figures we see floating around.
Right.
Because those figures are not justifiable. We no longer have a reason, if we have the comprehensive school, we no longer have a reason for children to sit a national exam in grade 6.
So it's not
There is no reason.
So it's not that they are being paid for, it's how much it costs. So let's look at that into a little bit of detail, shall we? The National Examination Council is responsible for all of this in terms of how exams are set. The exam setters work under the auspices of the council.
Yeah.
So it's not information that's being brought from outside the country. It is here.
Yeah.
It's already here. So they decide, coming off of curriculum, and in conjunction with the folks at the curriculum, the KICD, they then decide what will be set in exams. So the information is here. So what are we talking about essentially? Putting that information according to grades and classes, if it's the KCPE that's written, if it's the KCSE, for which we only have 2 years of that left, or if it's the KEPSEA exam, or it's these assessment exams now that we're seeing for grade 7 and grade 9, and those will happen later. It's essentially taking this information, because they've been set, and putting them on paper, isn't it? Maybe there needs to be a watermark. Are we saying these things cannot be done in Kenya? The reasons that we've been given before is that there are certain security seals that are needed for the purposes of, curbing exam cheating, etc., and manipulation. But that is the reason why they are taken outside the country.
I taught in the university. I set exams, I marked, and submitted those marks to the university senate for approval.
Yes.
And people graduated with degrees. So...
You didn't send them to London?
You didn't send them to London?
No. And so, if it is deficit of integrity in exam management, we have seen it anyways, even after the exams are printed in the UK. We've seen the exams leaked. And we can deal with that without imposing a cost on parents and a cost on the taxpayer by saying we'll go to print exams in the UK because it can leak. And then eventually come back here and leak it anyways. We can deal with that and just have... Sometimes it surprises me that we, the people in poor countries that are developing, are the ones who are
spending
obsessed
money we
with
don't have.
Expenditures that we don't need. In France, they print their ballot paper on ordinary paper.
Newsprint.
It's run by the Minister for Interior. They call volunteers to go and count the ballots. Here we take our elections cost 10 times what elections in developed nations that give us aid cost. For what? And then after that, we are always on the streets because the elections have been rigged. Despite. Why are we hell-bent on spending money that we don't have and we don't need to spend?
For something that we eventually don't get.
I'm befuddled with all these things. I thank God my children are not in this system. And this was before CBC was announced. Me, I made the choice, Kitambo. So I'm not running away. I ran away before it began. My question is this. There's CBE, there's, what is that, NEMIS?
It's now chemists.
Okay. Then there's all these changes that are being announced almost all the time. This generation that is being experimented on. What exactly is going on? And for the sake of our listeners, what is the solution and how quickly can we solve it?
So I support the change from NEMIS to chemists. I know chemists was developed sometimes back. It was supposed to be implemented. The idea behind chemists was that it will integrate all the data that about the children, and that it will also be tamper-proof, because there have been claims of tampering with NEMIS, and there were also claims of not knowing actually how many children were in our education sector system, because we had children who were not in NEMIS even though they were in school, and so chemist is supposed to seal some of those gaps, and my hope and prayer that it is implemented well enough to provide a solution to those gaps that were seen within the NEMIS system. I think that if that is done, the next thing that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we account for every shilling that we allocate to the sector? So that if we can be able to account for every shilling that we allocate to the sector, then we'll be able to see where the gaps, genuine gaps are. Because right now, we don't know what are genuine gaps and what are gaps created for purposes of extorting parents sometimes, and for purposes of just mobilizing money that we do not know where it goes. So if we can be able to account, if government can transparently say, we allocated this many billions. This year we are not able to give you this many billions. We'll only be able to give you this. And then we can be able to ask, if you are not able to give us what was asked for by the sector, what is the gap that remains?
Okay.
With this gap, what can development partners do and what can parents do to fill the gap and then get all the services we need?
Has that ever happened? Let's look at the last 4 years. 4 years of the budget. The education sector has never received, in the last 4 years, not under 600 billion shillings in the budget. It has never been under 600 billion.
Allocated,
not received. Thank you. Allocated. We often see a deficit in, spending. Like you said, the largest, consumers of this education budget really is in recurrent expenditure. When it comes to salaries and things like this. In terms of new development, whether it's curriculum development, whether it's infrastructure development for education, we usually see a minimal effort towards that. But then we also go year on year with a deficit. That is capitation on having not been paid, this or that classroom having not been completed, kind of thing. Do we ever see an audit review of the budget for education? Have we ever seen one to say that? There was 600 billion shillings allocated. There was 500 billion received. And this is what was used.
The Auditor General does these audits. The problem is that part of the money for education sector has been scattered and put in CDF and other places. Now, when the Auditor General does the audit report goes to Parliament, where some of the MPs who have misappropriated the money that was given to them through CDF are supposed to approve that report. If they can't approve it, it can't become a public document and a valid document for accountability. So I think we have messed up our system of governance to the point where we are just in the mud. So anything you touch is dirty. And that is a problem. Because these audit reports are supposed to help us understand how the resources are being allocated, how they're being utilized, and they're supposed to help us understand where the gaps are, where the loopholes that need to be sealed are, where the chain is weakest, so that we understand we could do better by investing more here, we could do better by still using much better what we have already invested. We have also not been very transparent in terms of how much we are actually sending to schools. So school heads are saying we have not received money, government is saying we have sent money. So who is telling the truth? And where do we get that truth?
And that's a good question to ask. Who is telling the truth? Because, Doc, for a very long time, education has been seen not as a national agenda, but a political card that is being wielded by the politicians. Because one would get in and say, I will construct classrooms, not because it is a national agenda, but because they want, as we could call them, bonga points. You know, something for them to say, I did this during my tenure, not because the education system needs it. We talk about the manual that is there and not being followed. One goes to ask, why are we not following the manual that is there if the taxpayers spent money to have this manual in place to guide how the education sector is being run? And one asks the question that what effect is politics playing in mismanaging the education of this country? Because you talk about CDF and how even audit reports are not being taken seriously because we know politics that is playing there.
Education is always political in all countries. The only problem here is that we are playing bad politics with education. That is the problem. Otherwise, if you look at the countries that have developed, they made a very deliberate political decision to invest in education, to make the education systems efficient. A few weeks ago, I think 2 or so, we hosted here the former mayor of Sobral. Sobral is a municipality in Brazil that has become the global icon of how you can transform education. And people go there to visit, and I've been there with some other people from Kenya to see how they have transformed education there. And the mayor told us the first thing they did when their coalition took over in that municipality was first of all to consolidate schools. They closed some of those that were too tiny around, that were not viable. They closed them. They transformed how schools are actually led. They decided that they would provide transport for children to go to schools, but merged schools to make sure we had fewer properly managed schools. And Sobral has become a global icon. So education is always political, but which kind of politics are you doing with the education sector? If you look at countries that have developed like China, China decided they will take their best brains, take them to Ivy League universities over the years, bring them back home, establish their own universities. And that is how they have developed. Now us here, we think that the best politics to do with education is to say we are doing things free and try to win an election with that. We are trying to win elections with politics and not doing the politics of saying, how can we use education to transform our country?
Absolutely.
Just a quick question. One, should we have devolved education? Perhaps we'd have 47 different ways of approaching CBC, but we say we have a national curriculum, but it's managed per county. Would that have been a solution to this? Because then counties would be smaller units to be held accountable more easily.
Counties are as unaccountable by the national government, but I think that what should have been devolved is infrastructure. It will be easy to start to compare county A and B I come from a county that in the first 10 years of county governments did fairly well in terms of improving rural infrastructure. And my friends from neighboring counties have always said, you guys were lucky here. I remember one of them even telling us in the run-up to 2017 that if we didn't want to re-elect our governor, we should loan him to them. So I think that infrastructure, which is physical and visible and tangible, should have been developed so that we can see which county is actually building classrooms and labs in schools and which one is not. We should not have this money floating in CDF. I think that the money floating in CDF is undermining public accountability, accountability for public resources in the country. I think that we should also not even have the money for infrastructure stuck in Jogo. Because what that does is that members of parliament are hanging on the corridors of Jogo trying to get one or two more classrooms in their constituency. And for that reason, the ministry can't be accountable, really. No. When the people who are supposed to oversight it are queuing in the corridors to seek a favor. So I think that we need to restructure those. But more importantly, I think, from where we are now, we have a huge deficit of infrastructure as we look at transition to grade 10, especially for the technical programs that we have come up with, the sports programs.
So
I have said this before and I want to repeat now here.
Yes.
I think this year, the president should make housing levy a school development levy. For this 1 year, even if he's so interested in housing, he can return it in 2026 to 27. But he used the housing levy this year, dedicated to school development, so that we can get out of a huge quagmire that we are in, at least for this year.
Yeah, because we're actually in a transition year, aren't
yes,
we?
It is good economics to invest in education. It is good national development. It is good politics too, to invest in education. Let this year's housing levy fund be transformed into a school development levy. And let us upgrade all the schools that require upgrading. Because I have seen, we plan that every secondary school will have at least 2 pathways. Majority of sub-county schools have no capacity to offer STEM pathway. If you take people's children there, you have trapped them into a dark tunnel to nowhere.
I want to open that just a little bit, Dr. Harry, because we have about 5 minutes to go, but I think it's vital here. Because in terms of moving forward, we are taking the learners who are currently in grade 9. This term, they are selecting their pathways, actually, right? They go into pathways in grade 10. The ministry has then given the order, or whatever it is, that in the next 9 months, and that was from March, that then they needed to figure out how these pathways were going to come together, number one. Previously, they said remove mathematics. They've come back and they've said have proper and simple maths. You put simple maths from the STEM going forward, and you put proper math in primary school. So they've been given 9 months to make sure that these pathways are properly developed. But do we have everything that we need to ensure that the pathways are available around the country when we still have, till today, schools categorized? Is it possible to do that?
The schools are going to be recategorized. That is fine. But calling Mudhurwa Secondary School a STEM school and calling Aland a STEM school that does not persuade any parent to consider this Mudhurwa Secondary School an equivalent of Alliance. And so the scramble for the few schools that were known to be good, well-equipped and properly staffed will continue.
Yes.
And that is something that we have wanted to do away with. Because the promise we have given Kenyan children is that they'll have the right to access quality education. We have not given them a promise that says some children will access this level of quality and others will just be given a chance to grow up in school. Because there are a lot of children getting
growing up in school.
Yeah, if you go to secondary school today and you score grade E, you qualify after secondary for they call them what? They call them what is the name? The name has gone. They are called artisan courses. You qualify for artisan courses. The person who stopped in class 8 qualifies for artisan course. So for your 4 years, you're just growing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of growing up, and we've got 2 minutes, this has been burning in me. Universities, in the shortest way possible, what is going on? What's the fix?
For us to solve the problem in our universities, first of all, 2 main things. Leadership, which we must depoliticize. It has become, this is our village university, it must be headed by our kinsman. That must stop. But secondly, we must consolidate them. We have too many of them, we cannot sustain them. We can't. We can't sustain the number of universities we have. Look at bigger economies like Egypt, like South Africa. They have fewer universities than we do. And they're bigger economies, bigger populations.
Yes.
We can't sustain the number of universities we have. They have been mismanaged badly. I taught in the university, I left the university seeing it being run down.
And there was a call that there must be a university in every county in the Republic at some point.
And that is the stupid politics we do with education. We want to win elections with education. You go and promise people a university and they cheer you. And you know for sure you do not have resources to fund it and there is no need for it. There's no boy who grows up in my village, goes to a secondary school there and wants to go to a university there.
Yeah,
it's not even beneficial for them. It doesn't create the citizen we want of Kenya. It makes them a citizen of my village.
Very briefly, what does it take for us to play good politics with the education and finally to just follow the manual and fix the education sector?
You know, society is developed through historical accidents. By an accident, you land on a good leader. Good leaders are not really chosen by people because by the time you're choosing, you're just choosing one of you. But it takes someone who is not one of you to transform you. Countries that have developed, they have developed through historical accidents. You land on someone you didn't even think should be the one leading you, and they chart the way. If you look at Germany with Otto von Bismarck, you look at America with Lincoln, you look at Singapore, you look at Malaysia with Mahathir. All these were individuals who had a vision, and they managed to persuade people and tell them, what you think is popular is not the right thing. We will do the right thing. And manage to get people to do the right thing. And Kenya does not have a shortage of such a people. They just simply haven't gotten to the right positions.
Indeed. I mean, when you look at it across board, it seems that there's just too much going on, that is too much wrong going on all at the same time. Is it salvageable?
It is always salvageable. Otherwise, why are we living?
Indeed. Or why do we keep talking about it?
Why are we living?
If we were sure that tomorrow will be darker than today, why are we living? There will be light. How long the dark tunnel is, I don't know, but there will be light. I have faith in that.
Indeed. Executive Director of Usawa Agenda is Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, and he's been with us this morning, interrogating some of these issues and essentially lifting the lid on some of these conversations that we ought to have. Thank you so much for being here again this morning.
Thank you for having me.